it's one that Bill had brought up and unfortunately had to drop out. But one of them was the growth of Pokemon over the last, year. It's been pretty significant growth. So what are your opinions on that growth? A question that I'd have for you is, did you think about getting into that market yourself as you saw it growing? And do you think it hurt sports cards?
This 85.
For me, no. I never gave it a thought, to be quite honest.
Okay.
Mostly because I've never had any experience with it whatsoever.
30.
And I've always been of the opinion that, it's the same. I don't know enough about Pokemon to probably say this, I guess, but to me, it's the same characters. There's Charizard and Pikachu and whatever characters there are, but it's been the same characters since like the late 90s.
Yes.
So year over year when they release new Pokemon, I understand they might be new designs, but if it's the same characters, at some point it's going to become like the 80s and 90s were in sports cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really considered getting into it because of that, because I always felt like eventually it's going to get watered down.
Mm-hmm.
I think from what I'm seeing, and I've seen a lot of stuff on social media just in the last 24 hours, where people are like, hey, Pokemon's taking a turn. And I literally just saw a tweet about an hour ago on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, where a guy said, I used to be able to post cards, Pokemon cards on eBay, and they would sell within hours.
Yeah.
But in the last week, I'm experiencing that they're sitting for now days.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
there's
So
something happening in that market.
yeah, there and that is one of the reasons that we definitely brought up this topic. So, during, and we've brought it up, so just to review this really quickly, like during COVID, the COVID boom, if you want to call it that, it didn't seem to increase Pokemon that much. There was a little uptake, but it was mostly sports cards. This latest boom that we've been talking about for a little over 18 months, going on 2 years now, we're getting close to 2 years. It has brought Pokemon into it. Now, I think there are multiple reasons. I do think that one of the reasons is that it got very expensive to collect sports cards. So families wanted to participate. Even if you like go on our shelf right now, you're looking at the average hobby box on my shelf being $450, but the average booster box of Pokemon's $225, on our shelf. So some of them did take a big increase, but it was more affordable to, I guess, get into Pokemon. I don't really think it hurt sports. I think that sports hurt itself by that market getting so hot, and then it allowed people to kind of go over there. But like at the Circleville show, it complemented each other. I felt like you come and maybe your kids want Pokemon, but you want sports cards, just go over to the other room. So I think it, kind of hurt it. But I think surprising to a lot of us is that it wasn't just Pokemon. It was One Piece that about 6 months ago really began to grow, maybe even a year ago. And then the next thing seemed to be Dragon Ball Z. And there's always things popping up, but Dragon Ball Z seems to be that. But to speak to what you were saying about the downturn, I think it's Boston Card Hunter, who's really grown on YouTube recently, over the last year or so. He borrowed somebody else's analysis and did a video, and it was like, invest in this, hold this, get out of this. And the number one get out of was Pokemon, the number one thing to move. And then I saw there's a guy named Rudy. I actually shared it with all you guys. It's Alpha Investments, and he's huge in Magic, but Pokemon, he's right there too. And he's like, it's already changing. And again, I guess I'll ask you this question. To hear that market's declining, if you're a Pokemon collector, how should you feel about that?
Well, I think if you're a collector, if you're a genuine collector, I don't think it really affects you a lot, other than maybe it opens up some new opportunities for you,
Yeah.
to afford some different things that you couldn't maybe afford previously.
Mhm.
If you're a dealer, hopefully you're staying ahead of that,
Mhm.
and
and
you're constantly trying to stay one step ahead of as the decline happens. But if
Yeah.
you're a flipper, if you're one of those people that running out to Target and buying boxes and then trying to flip those boxes,
Yeah.
that category of people might be in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do agree with you. So yeah, again, it's kind of like if the sports card market takes a little downturn and you collect Brett Favre or whatever, then you're just able to finish your collection or keep collecting a little bit more affordably. I think that is how Pokemon people need to look at it. But you did mention the selling side. So it is interesting because for us as a local hobby shop, we went from 10% of our sales being TCG to 30 to 35% of our sales being TCG. So to see that number go back down, it is kind of like, what does your local hobby shop do to replace
Right.
those numbers? What's gonna happen there? So it is interesting, and it'll be interesting to see if the experts are all right that are predicting this kind of downturn in the Pokemon market. So there was one other thing that I definitely, because I just felt it was kind of timely, and maybe you could speak on this. You could throw some PSA numbers out there or whatever. But one of the big things in the hobby that was news this week is we're looking at grading and those sort of things is basically it would be CGC kind of fired some shots, for lack of a better term. They literally went on Instagram, called out other grading companies and their length of time to get something back, and kind of attacked that, and kind of said, hey, we have some room over here. So just giving people a background, there's PSA, which is the cream of the crop for sure. And then you have Beckett, which used to be the cream of the crop if you went back 10 years ago or so, or it was at least neck and neck with PSA. And then you have SGC, which is now kind of owned by the whole umbrella that owns all of those. But the independent one that's standing right there, probably in fourth, is CGC. The difference between CGC and the next one in line, Tag, is that CGC seemed to get some acceptance in the sports card world, where Tag seems to just be, or Pokemon TCG kind of thing. So I guess this is the question before I wrote some facts down. So before I spit some facts, just, do you feel that CGC can make a solid leap to at least third, and do they have any potential for going much higher than that, in your opinion?
Something else is going to have to change for that to happen, in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't know what that thing is. Like, the thing could be PSA saying, hey, our value submissions when they come back are going to be $45 a card. I think it'll take some other thing to happen for CGC to make any kind of play. It's the same thing as every other brand when you compare them to PSA or Beckett. You look at cost of grading versus return on what you pay for the grading in the end, and I told you briefly at Southway, GMA, which is another one of those lower tier grading companies, and I've done okay with those, but not well enough that I would say, oh, I'm going to do that again.
Yeah.
So, and I would venture to guess, for me at least, CGC is probably in that same boat with GMA. I'd classify them. I like them. GMA, tag. I'd put all of them in kind of like a 4th through 6th tie.
Okay.
You know, and you could make arguments for which one you like based on a whole bunch of different things. But yeah, I think it's going to take something drastic for PSA and Beckett and SGC to be overtaken by somebody.
Yes. Yeah, I would mostly I can't disagree with you. I do want to put out some other information. I do know that it was really weird that they made this, some Instagram posts where they're kind of being aggressive with their marketing and, confrontational even.
Yeah.
And then they also contacted shops directly and was wanting shops to submit through them, get information about how they can help their local customers. In a way, I almost think they're piggybacking off of the Fanatics thing. If you're a Fanatics shop and you were doing some PSA grading or you were doing Beckett grading, and now you've kind of felt that law, it would depend on what kind of deal they could give local shops and how many local shops where that's where the money is, honestly. Those are the guys invested in making sure this lasts a while. Maybe they can make some headway there. I did just want to mention a couple things about pricing. So right now, for PSA, $80. $80 is considered what? Standard, basically?
That's the cheapest option that exists right now. Yeah.
That is the cheapest option that exists right now. For Beckett, they have something called standard that would compare to CGC's standard, is why I'm mentioning it. For Beckett standard, it is 10 to 15 days. For Beckett standard grading is 10 to 15 days, and it's $80. That's how much it costs. For what CGC considers standard, it is $55, and they guarantee 10 days. So very similar, just $25 price difference there or whatever. Now, I just wanted to throw this information out for those who, kind of, well, what's the difference when you go to resell? And I picked an 89 Griffey rookie out of 9. And so that's what I did, just to give some information. So all I did simply was go to eBay, took the average of what a PSA 9 went for the last 30 days for a Griffey, a PSA, a Beckett, a CGC, and an SGC. So a PSA for sure leads the pack. A PSA, the average for the last 30 days for a 9, for an 89 Griffey was $475. $475. Beckett is at about $360. So almost $100 difference. But when you're seeing those price differences, you could definitely get a Beckett for $80, have it back in 10 days. Okay. And then a CGC was closer to 4, which I thought was weird. It was actually slightly higher. Now, we start to get less numbers, though, to work with. So that could be part of it, too. But a CGC is slightly higher than Beckett at 375. So I just felt like that was interesting. So it was like, if it was a situation where you're like, I want to get a card back, I want to get it graded, I need it in 10 to 15 days. And it'd almost be a toss-up between going Beckett or going CGC. So maybe a little cheaper to go CGC and maybe a little quicker turnaround time. Now, in one of their posts, I did see some people saying, if you're saying it's all open, if you're saying come to us, then why haven't I got my card that I submitted 3 months ago? So people are, pushing back too on social media, which happens pretty regularly. So, do you have any final thoughts about that, or you're, not to put words in your mouth, but you're pretty sure a year from now PSA is still at the top?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. I don't see anything happening with PSA. It's yeah. I mean, they've got what, a 12 million card backlog. I mean, and people are just chomping at the bit to send cards in. I mean, I've done the shop's submissions for quite a while, and
Yes.
some of the customers came to me at Circleville and said, "Hey," it wasn't, "Hey, when are my cards going to be back?" It's, "Hey, when can we submit again?"
Yeah.
So, and like everybody knows, I've been working with Kevin. Kevin told me, he's like, "Man, I got a stack of like 50 cards I'm ready to send in." And I've got other people in my group that have said, "Hey, I'm waiting for PSA to open up. When they're ready, I can send 20 or 25." So,
Mhm.
That's and I'm sure PSA's got to take that into account down the road, that
Mhm.
they're going to get bombarded whenever they do start opening the gates again.
Mhm.
The only thing that I'll add to the whole process is, I wonder if, when it comes time for PSA to
Mhm.
start accepting lower tier submissions, if they will put a maximum per submission on that, if they'll put a cap on it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah,
So
that yes.
instead of you and I each sending in 500 cards apiece, we might only be able to send 50 at a time to try to slow it down,
Mhm.
But this could be a conflict of interest, and if it is, you can probably shut this down real quick. But what are the chances that Fanatics comes out with a grading company?
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I don't know. Have tried to kind of have their hand in every area of the hobby, so I don't understand why them either buying an existing one
Hmm.
and putting their name behind it or establishing their own, why that wouldn't be a plan in the future.
If 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 Fanatics were to say buy CGC,
Hmm.
talk about putting the big engine behind, the small
Oh,
locomotive kind of thing. I mean, something drastic like that could happen and really swing it. So,
oh, yeah. Yes, I totally agree. Something like that. But based on, your thoughts, and it appears like a lot of collectors' thoughts, something pretty major would have to happen to dethrone PSA as the go-to for grading. So,
yeah,
but yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. We got, a couple other topics I'm already kind of thinking of for the next time, but it might be a couple weeks before we do another one of these. Maybe next time Nick will be there and Bill will be able to hang out the whole time. We'll get some of the technical stuff figured out. But yep, Mike, thanks for being on here and answered some questions with me.
absolutely. Anytime.